All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ventures podcast. I'm excited about today's episode with Mike Sorgenfrey. He is the co-founder and CEO of Encore, Encore.fans. This conversation, we get into a bunch of different practical web3 implications for how any kind of creator, but especially he's going to start in the sports space, can connect with their fans. So we're always looking for applications in Web3 and why it matters. And this is a great deep dive into Mike's story, into the Encore story, into the value proposition and the actual application, and why this is creating value for influencers and sports athletes, and why this is valuable for their fans. So if you're listening to this episode, you can also watch by visiting wclittle.com, and there I'll have more extensive show notes to the things that we talk about today. And if you're watching, you can also listen anywhere that you get your podcasts. You can search for Ventures, and it should show up. So with that, please enjoy this conversation with Mike Sorgenfrey. All right, Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So we've had, the last 40 episodes or so have been all about Web3, why Web3 matters, different angles, different perspectives, different ventures, different entrepreneurial stories. I'm extremely intrigued with you and what you're up to in this space. So would you mind just telling audience just a little bit about yourself and how you got into Web3?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've played a significant role in that journey. And so you kind of seen it evolve. But I think actually, the first time I heard about Web3, I was surfing in Nicaragua. I had just, my first company that I started, we had just merged with a bigger influencer marketing platform, and I took 2-3 weeks off, as you do in those situations, and I was surfing through Nicaragua and Costa Rica, and people were talking about this crazy thing called Bitcoin, and it was like digital currency that you could send anywhere, and it was, whatever, $8 or $10 or something like that. And my background's finance. I was at Morgan Stanley for 2.5 years, and I'm like, I don't get it. Like, what's the value of it? Why do you need it? And everybody's like, dude, just buy it. It's gonna be fine. I'm like, no, I'm never buying that. So that was awesome. Really glad I didn't listen to
Right, seriously.
that. Yeah. But that was my first exposure to it. I didn't really start diving into it until I started running an innovation team at Walmart. We were looking at real world blockchain applications for the supply chain, for product issues, for different applications there. And it made me really, really interested in those applications. I had heard of the token side and obviously was exposed to it before, but that's what kind of got me most interested, was just seeing how dynamic blockchain and distributed technology and distributed ledgers can be. And then with everybody, I got sucked into the NFT hype and craze and excitement, started going down that rabbit hole. And that's when I really started chatting with my buddy Nat, who's now co-founder, and just kind of thinking through what are different ways that NFTs can be applied outside of just art, and trying to understand it. And we had friends that would always ask us about what are NFTs and what's blockchain. And so we had an idea where we were going to set up an art gallery, just a very, very simple art gallery of our NFTs, and then invite friends to come see that art gallery, and just as a way of explaining what NFTs were and kind of showing them off. And we thought about, let's actually create tickets that are NFTs to go there. And that completely kind of steamrolled for us. It was a lightning bulb moment. It was, well, could we actually disrupt tickets now? We would go to a bunch of concerts together and book sporting events together. We hated the ticketing process. And so that really just kind of launched Encore, what would eventually become Encore, and also just the excitement about the technology in this space.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit more, and maybe dive into the Encore story a bit. What's the origin story, and what is Encore?
Yeah, I mean, so the origin story involves many bottles of wine and really good pasta in the East Village. But the idea there was that just as a fan, this was peak pandemic, starting to see maybe the light at the end of the tunnel, and thinking about how desperately we wanted to get back to concerts, how desperately we want to get back to sporting events. But the thing that we were not looking forward to was buying tickets on the secondary market with, rates hiked 3 to 4x and service fees of, half the ticket price. And so between that whole kind of pain point, like being so excited about the world returning, and then also like just feeling that the fan experience was kind of so painful, and we knew that it was only going to be worse because there was so much pent up demand to get to these shows. Plus everything we were learning about the NFT space and all the excitement there, we just really wanted to set out to figure out how do we create a better fan experience. And so that was the start of Encore. We started actually as cryptics, and the complete idea there was to build a ticketing platform using blockchain technology, and we were focused on Solana's chain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so some exciting things coming up for Encore. What's the roadmap here the next couple of months?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, origins were ticketing. We've completely evolved that and reworked it. We saw that ticketing was really just a symptom of what we believe is the bigger problem, which is the disconnect between fans and creators. We see this in music, but we also see this in sports a lot. We were kind of blown away by the fact that you would have a loyalty program for an airline that you were always late for, a credit card that charged you a bunch of money, and hotels that you didn't really want to stay at. But there's no loyalty program for your favorite musician or your favorite athletes or your alma mater. And so that's what actually brought us into the loyalty and identity space, and thinking about, well, how can we turn this passion of fandom that we felt so much, and that we still feel, into an asset. So it's something that fans can show as a point of pride. It creates belonging and community, but then also it unlocks experiences, discounts, and rewards. And so that's what Encore is focused on today. Encore is focused on taking identity and turning it into a digital asset, using blockchain technology and verifiable credentials. And we're starting with fandom, the sports and music space. And over the next couple of weeks here, we're actually going to launch with the first handful of professional athletes as well as collegiate athletes, to start building their fan identity protocols out, and their loyalty programs for their fans.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, I have a million questions. So, from an
Right.
education standpoint, can you tell our audience what is a verified credential?
Yes. I don't know. No, no, no. The way that I describe verifiable credentials, and I honestly owe Evan at Disco credit for this example, is that we think of it as like an NFT is almost like a driver's license, meaning that a driver's license will get me into a bar in the States. I can use it in different states, but I can't get into Europe with my driver's license, right? A verifiable credential would essentially be like your passport. It's can be chain agnostic. It can be offline as well as online, and it can kind of you go anywhere. And so while I can not use my driver's license to get into Europe, I can use my passport and get into Europe. And so for us, the value of a verifiable credential above and beyond an NFT is that we're not tied to a chain. Right. So we can kind of use that identity wherever we want to go. And so the easiest way to think of a verifiable credential is like a passport that you would put into your own data backpack so that you can go anywhere you want to in the world.
Because presumably, then there is another database out there, probably a centralized database, that also confirms that this person or this identity has this credential. And then there's a matching between that credential on chain and a credential in a centralized database, like a government database. Is that
Exactly right. Yep. It's a key pair, and you're just matching to confirm that this person does have this credential. And what's nice is that you can kind of do that matching back to any chain, right? So our smart contracts live on Solana, but that verifiable credential could grant you access to something on Ethereum or any other chain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now how are you using verified credentials in the fan space? Like, what does that look like tangibly with your application?
Yeah, so right now it's a pretty rudimentary application in the sense of you have a fan score. So, I'm a Katy Perry fan and I have 25,000 points kind of thing. That's
Mm,
that's actually true. Uh, but
nice.
and right now that's basically just used within Katy Perry's ecosystem, to use this example. bigger vision is how does that verifiable credential unlock other experiences, right? Unlock experiences in the metaverse, unlock experience across other brands, unlock experiences across other chains and protocols, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I could use that verifiable credential with Lens protocol, and that unlocks some sort of social network, right? And all the credentials there. Or we talk a lot about the idea of what if Coachella could grant early access to Coachella tickets based upon anybody that had any fan score above 5,000 for an artist,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's taking a credential that doesn't have every one of my data points, doesn't have all of my information. I'm not kind of turning over all of my identity. It's just that verifiable credential, using it to unlock an experience at a different party and brand. So in the future, we see the applications being that you can use your identity outside of any specific creator or environment that it was generated in.
Okay, so if I'm on Katy Perry's staff and I want to know who all the fans are and do this kind of loyalty or do this kind of perks thing, am I keeping my own database and then using Encore's protocol to issue these
Absolutely.
credentials, or what? Help me understand where the data is and what the value add for somebody like on Katy Perry's staff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, right? Because at some angle, people are like, wait, I'm throwing out my database, right? That I've spent years of creating, or like you're suggesting I don't use Facebook or something. And that's not it at all, right? What we're talking about is there's over $50 billion spent a year just on third-party marketing data. So this is like I'm going to spend on pixels and cookies to try to figure out who you are, Will, so that I can target you more effectively.
Hmm.
To us, that's money that should just be spent back to the individual, right? So if you're just trying to learn who I am, why don't you just ask me? Why don't you just say, hey, are you interested in XYZ? And if I am willing to answer, if I'm willing to participate, I should get something in return for that. And so that's the whole dynamic. That's the whole economy that we've set up. So Katy Perry says, hey, are you following me on social media? And I say, yes, I am. I'll connect my Twitter to show that I'm following you on Twitter. And in return, I earn what are now points and maybe eventually tokens for Katy Perry, right? And so I'm sharing that I follow her on social media and I'm receiving points back. And so for Katy Perry, she gets this first party data in her staff. She gets this first party data about each user across all of her touch points that she can then understand kind of that complete vision of who that user is. And then what the user gets is one, points in return to unlock discounts and rewards, and then an aggregated score that lives on chain and becomes your self-sovereign identity and credential. So we're not storing every single person you follow on chain. We're not storing every single touch point we have. We're storing that aggregated score so that you can say, hey, this is my pass to be able to go anywhere I want. And Katy Perry gets all this first party data across all the touch points in return for giving the users those points. So they then take that first party information that they got across all these users and then use it to more effectively personalized marketing, offer personalized experiences, create unique experiences, what have you. So we are really the identification and data layer, if you will. We're not trying to replace marketing tools. We're not trying to replace databases. We're not trying to say we're the only credential you should use, right? There's not a social graph there. There's not an age verification there. There's not an identity verification there. We're just purely trying to quantify and unlock fandom as an asset.
Okay. So that answers partially my next question then, which is where does your data and application lay in the stack? Just to again help understand for those that are listening where the value of Encore is in the mix of all the other things that the hypothetical Katy Perry staff person is going to have to use.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of bifurcate that into two pieces. Like, where does this fall on the stack for Katy Perry's, or who would be our paying customer, and where does this fall on the stack for a fan, like an individual, right?
Sure. Mhm.
Today, where it falls in the stack is, Katy Perry. I don't actually know these numbers, but let's say on a good percentage, maybe 20% of her fans are into Web3, right? That number is not very high, and so that what it looks like for Katy Perry's fans right now is that you go to Katy Perry's website, you click a button that says join your loyalty program and you start earning points for sharing your information and data, right? They're not yet using it to work cross-chain or unlock experiences in the metaverse, right? So today that just kind of looks like an experience that lives on Katy Perry's website because we are a powered by solution. You're not going to download Encore. You're not having to go to the Encore website. You go to Katy Perry's website and you interact with Katy Perry. Where that looks like in the future for a fan, we're big believers of what everybody's doing, what Evan's doing over at Disco, which is kind of like your Apple Wallet for verifiable credentials. So we hope that your fandom card lives in your broader Apple Wallet of verifiable credentials. And so in there maybe is your social network, in there's maybe your, educational credentials, and there's maybe your age credentials, what have you. And so we hope that there's a world where users are able to control and participate in their data a little bit more. And so we are that fan stack, that fan layer within your overall identity. So that's what we want it to look like on the fan side, both today and tomorrow. On the user side, or on the customer side, on the Katy Perry side, we want it essentially to look and feel like a very easy CRM, right? We want it to be, here are my fans, here are all of my touch points, here's the points that they have, here's how often they're engaging, here's what they're doing. And then we want them to be able to use that data to connect with their fans more directly, right? They're experts at understanding what their fans want. They're experts in understanding the music that makes them happy, the experiences that make them happy, the offerings that they want. Their challenge today is just understanding who their fans are. So that's our goal. Tell them who their fans are, and hopefully they'll create great experiences for their fans.
Interesting. Okay. So then if I'm a Katy Perry fan, I have an app on my phone. So you're saying this would be not an Encore app, this would be a Katy Perry app?
Correct. The easiest way to think about it, and this is where we're starting, is sports, right? So you might have your MLB app or even an ESPN app or like your team's app. And so in there would be a rewards section, and you would click on the rewards and you would see the ways that you can earn points as well as what you can redeem your points for. And all that would be powered by Encore.
I see. So is that right out of the gate here then? Is that what apps would I have on my phone where I can interact with Encore loyalty, or what's your kind of go-to-market strategy here?
Yeah, great question. So essentially the go-to-market is almost like a link tree, right? So we're working with a partner named Caleb McConnell, who's the defensive player of the year for men's basketball last year, and he's at Rutgers. And so he's going to put like a link in his bio, and you can click on that and then join his program. Or Kurt Benkert, who's a professional quarterback and a professional esports player. And so he's massive on Twitch, and he does live tournaments all the time, just completed a massive Fortnite tournament. And so he's going to participate in a very similar way, put his link in bio, add it to his different Twitch accounts. And so now his fans can start connecting and earning points and interacting that way. So Kurt has a website. Caleb doesn't have a website. And so we can integrate into their websites, or we just create a link for them that they can add to any of their social platforms.
And that link would then go to a page on Encore's site that would be their page, so to speak. Is that how that's going to work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, unless they have a website. So then they would have like rewards at Kurt.com. I'm making this up.
Right.
And if not, then it's Encore.com/Kurt Benkert.
Got it. Very cool.
Which is one of the best names out there in sports. Kurt Benkert, shout out. It's just so fun to say. You got to say the whole name at once.
That's good. Okay, so then you're going to launch that way. Then what does the next year look like for Encore? Like, tell us a little bit more about the roadmap. What's coming?
Yeah, so our roadmap is starting in sports and then getting to music. There's such an interesting intersection between sports, music, and brands. And so just kind of by this process of starting to speak with so many of these partners, we're starting to see a lot of traction with brands also trying to think about like what does the future of their membership programs look like. So there's a lot of excitement. Our goal is to start with collegiate and expand from there. So we're launching with Caleb, as I mentioned. We also have great partnerships across the NIL space. So I don't know how closely you're following this, but for the first time, college athletes can use their name, image, and likeness to create revenue. Right now, it's essentially using athletes as a billboard, right? So just kind of post this on Instagram and then go. We think there's a much better way of doing that. And so we're working with NIL platforms like Mogul and NoCap and Playbook to help them create better experiences for their fans, right? And so if you know who your fans are, then you can offer them promotions using your name, image, and likeness that are more relevant to them and more interesting to them, and then provide that data back to advertisers and partners and what have you. And so that's our plan on the collegiate side, and then also working with universities directly to help them. So that's the collegiate end. On the professional end, we have some really exciting conversations going with leagues everywhere from like USTA to the NHL. And they're thinking about, what does membership look like? What does it look like to show your fandom outside of season tickets, which historically has been the way to show fandom? What does it look like as we try to expand internationally, right? NBA is international, NFL is international. How do you reward those fans that can't come into your arena every single game? And so our goal is to start with athletes and then just kind of continue to launch these programs for more athletes, teams, and leagues.
Okay, so help me understand, if I'm really into, let's say, quarterback X at let's say my local university where I go to, or I'm an alma mater or whatever.
Yeah.
What are the kind of things that I would be receiving? Like, I'm a huge fan of this quarterback, and then I'm following this person on social media, and they say, "Hey, go click on this link." Am I part of a membership program? What are the things that what's the value that I'm going to receive as their fan by clicking on the link and signing up for whatever?
Yeah, so we've seen that our athletes are incredibly creative when they're thinking about rewards for their fans, right? So like, let's say you join the program and then you connect your socials, and so you earn some points, and you buy their jersey, and so you earn some points, and you go to their games, so you earn some points, and you follow them on Twitch, and you refer a friend, and so you've earned all these points now. And now what do you do with these points? Well, we've seen players that run pickup games, right? So they just go out there and they play with their fans, right? So whether that's a basketball player playing a pickup game, and so they're releasing points for that. We've seen players who come before the game and they're allowed to come on court and do shoot arounds with them, or come onto the field and then they'll come by and sign something for them before the game. We've seen players that do social media shout outs. We've seen players that are really into videos, and they'll create a bespoke video, almost like a cameo like experience, that they then send to their fans as a thank you. They also work with their universities in most cases, right? So maybe that's a university you can get free food or free drinks, or you can attend an exclusive tailgate or what have you.
Okay,
So
wow, sky's the limit.
Yeah, exactly. So we've seen that. Honestly, this was something that we were concerned about, right? Our students, our athletes, our teams going to even be able to like have enough touch points and then have enough rewards? And what we found from just talking to fans is that it's the small things that go a really long way. You know, one of my favorite examples of this is not so small, but one of my favorite examples of this is that we're working on a partnership with UCF, one of the largest public schools in North America. And they have an amazing facility, a really cool practice facility. And we were talking to some of their students, and we said, "Hey, what would you want a reward to be for being a UCF athletics fan?" And one thing that we heard over and over again was two things. One was a live stream into the locker room before the game to hear like the pump up, to hear the coach like give the pregame speech and get them fired up, that only fans could join. And then second was access to the practice field to play a pickup game with their buddies, right? And that's no cost to UCF. They flip on the lights in the practice arena and they let their fans out there. And both those things they had no idea that their fans wanted, because they're not connected with their fans because of this. And so that's another example of, once you're able to know and connect with your fans, it really unlocks exciting opportunities for both fans and our customers.
So right now, before Encore, how has quarterback X at a college team done that? Like, how have they run and monetized their NIL and connected with their fans? Are there competitors out there? Are they just scrapping it together with their own teams and their own data, spreadsheets or something? Or what has that been looking like?
Yeah, I mean, well, for the world of college, it's just changed so much in the last couple of years. For the first time, you're able to do NIL. And so now everybody's kind of becoming more aware of this. And what does that mean? I would say that most kind of the basics of NIL today are posting on social media or coming in for a signing. I think I saw a stat somewhere where that represents like 80% of NIL deals, right? So that's pretty rudimentary. It's not very creative, and that doesn't really let the creator or the athlete like shine as who they are. The other end of the spectrum, you have the Tom Brady's or the LeBrons of the world who have media companies and create NFT marketplaces and just have a million different touch points between them and their fans, but they have an entire team behind them, right? And so what you're alluding to is a real challenge with the creator economy that, unless you have all of the resources of a media arm and all the support, there hasn't been a lot of opportunities for you to date, right? Because it's hard to prove the value of that athlete or that creator. And so that's one of the things that we want to fix, right? You don't need millions and millions of followers to be able to engage and create tremendous amount of value for your fans, right? And so we believe that any creator, right? Athletes, musicians, esports, whatever it might be, should be able to better identify and reward their fans, whether that's 10 fans or 10 million fans, right? And there's no wrong way of being a fan. Right now, like I mentioned, it's kind of season tickets are bust. But what if you can't afford season tickets? What if you don't live in the market of season tickets? What if you're just a massive Madden fan? And we actually spoke to a kid who learned football by just playing Madden, has never been able to go to a football game. And so he's just a massive sports fan, but his touch points are not season tickets. And so he would fall through the cracks of, the team or the athlete to date. And so that's one of the things that we want to try to help fix.
So it's not hard to see then this extending to anyone, to any influencer, anybody that has a following. Like, even if I think of my own little podcast here, I interact with the fans, the listeners, the people that are into all this content mainly via newsletter. I don't really post much on social media or whatever, because I love the one-on-one interaction with people who reply, and then we get into a conversation over email. But is there a future where anyone who has any kind of audience can access? Because even what you're saying around loyalty, like, I would actually love to know who these people are. I'll meet them somewhere and I'll be like, oh yeah, actually listen to your show or whatever. What would that look like down the road? Could anybody use this? Are you gonna make this sort of open to any kind of influencer, or what does that look like?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the goal. So for us, the way that it's architected is that, the process is we work with a creator. They tell us what their touch points are, right? How are they currently engaging their fans? So let's take this podcast. You have a podcast, you have a newsletter, maybe you have some socials, right? So those are your touch points. They don't have to be 100 touch points. It's okay to have only a few. And so we would get that set up. And so anytime somebody listens, Spotify or YouTube or wherever, they would get points for listening. If they follow you on social, they would get points for following. If they engage, they would get points for engaging. If they subscribe to your newsletter, they get points for that. And you would be able to see that information. And as a fan, for regularly listening, regularly supporting, I would start earning points that I can then, redeem for maybe a lovely trip to the wilderness that's always in your beautiful background, right? or to come on the podcast, or to join and ask questions, or whatever it might be, right? And that's as easy as we want it to be to get started.
I mean, is that something you'd be literally willing to do with us here, or is that you have to start with the sports first?
No, so we have social media, we have newsletter sign up, we don't have Spotify integration yet. So as soon as we have Spotify integration as a touch point, or YouTube, or we actually have YouTube, but as soon as we get a few more where your podcast, we can get that up and running.
All right, so then just Web3 in general, like what is your? Let's back up a moment. Your reflections on the space. Obviously, you're co-founder, CEO of Encore. You're cranking out, you're building, which is great. We need more entrepreneurs building in Web3. So kudos to you and the team. But if you were to just back up and think, what are the things in Web3 that I'm really excited about, just philosophically? Where does your brain go to? What are the things that you think about?
Yeah, I mean, I will attribute most of our creativity in the Web3 space when it comes to Keanu, one of our other co-founders, and he leads our blockchain development. And so he is for sure much deeper and much further along. But he'll talk about stuff, and every once in a while I'll be like, yeah, that's real cool. And I think that I think unfortunately we kind of glossed over some of the fundamentals that I get most excited about, right? So actually tomorrow is my first class. I'm co-teaching at Fordham University a blockchain class. So it's real worlds of applications of blockchain. And I think some of the basics are really important that we need to nail down that have big applications, but have been lost in the noise, right? So global payments. We have developers that are not in the US, and it's still way easier to play them with a stable coin or a token of their privilege. That's great. That is a fantastic use case of web3 technology. It's not just leveraged shit tokens that you
Right.
hope are going to 10x, right?
Right.
And that has made our life so much easier on the payment side. And so I get really excited about what does that mean? We were talking about this within the Slack earlier. Just 7 million people in the States that are unbanked. That's a mind blowing number. I didn't know that, right? And so there's so many applications there that are not volatile cryptocurrencies or using Bitcoin for a cup of coffee, but really great stable coins, really great ways of helping the unbanked that I get really excited about. Obviously, we're really excited about the identity space, right? What that means for owning your own identity and turning identity into an asset. Obviously, we think a lot about them. And then I also get just really excited about the creative landscape, right? And I say that broadly because there's so much creativity that flooded into NFTs, and there's so much creativity that flooded into the metaverse. I don't know what that looks like yet. I don't think more NFTs is the answer or more metaverses, but how that comes together, I get really, really excited about. I actually met somebody this weekend who was not Web3 related, but he's helping build 3D models for military training, right? So you could repair a helicopter, or you could, train in a simulator where you don't have concussions, or fly for that training, or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the Web3 application is there yet, but it just feels like there's some exciting opportunities in the space there as well for kind of the creative front. So I would say broad three verticals: identity, true payments, and helping the unbanked. And then third is just kind of the creative landscape and whatever that might look like going forward.
Cool. All right. So how can people learn more about Encore, about you, if they want to continue the conversation, sign up, get involved in the buzz? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So real simple website, Encore.fans.
Hmm,
Very simple.
nice.
On all of our socials, we're Encore_fans. So you
Nice.
can find us there. We've talked about a Discord, but Discord scares me. I'm in too many with too many alerts.
Right.
So those are the best ways now. You can always reach me at Mike@Encore.fans.
Nice.
And we just want people sharing their fandom, sharing their fan stories.
Love it. Love it. Mike, this has been great. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Awesome experience.
All right, a couple quick things before you go. Number one, I have a general newsletter where I write about technology and startups and health science and teaching people to code. And I write about a variety of different subjects that we talk about on this show. So if you go to wclittle.com, there you'll be able to subscribe, and you'll also be able to subscribe to particular topics. If you're just interested in one or a few of them, you'll be notified right when I publish new content in those areas. Number two, my partners and I at Proto Ventures have a portfolio company called Startup Rocket. If you go to startuprocket.com, there you'll be able to receive coaching guides and customize an operations framework for you and your team and your advisors to be on the same page in terms of what is the appropriate next step for you and your entrepreneurial journey. And finally, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review anywhere that you have listened to this podcast or watched this podcast, it would be super helpful to help those who might be interested in consuming this content as well. Thank you.